Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pick Six podcast on a frigid February Thursday. I'm Sam McKewon, along with Tom Shatel and Evan Bland, now part of the heavy hitters, with Dirk Chatelain leaving for the time being. And, he said goodbye last week. Evan, you're in. Hello, sir.
How's it going? It's been a few months. I don't know if I'm a heavy hitter. I'm a contact hitter. I'll put the ball in play and make the defense make a mistake.
Unlike Nebraska baseball.
Aha.
He usually bats second or third. He's right up there.
I'm going to set the table. I'll be a table setter for the heavy hitters. You're a heavy hitter, Sam. I mean, let's be honest.
I'm a loudmouth. That's what I am. Although sometimes people will tell me that, I speak too softly on the podcast. So I'm going to try to speak up on the podcast.
See, well, we need a new name. The loudmouth isn't bad.
It might... But Evan's not.
I like the heavyweights. He's not a heavyweight. In terms of our appearance.
This is Sam, you're the fluctuator. You'll go quiet, and then you'll get really high.
That's
and passionate.
Right. That's right.
People are adjusting their volume all the time.
That's a really good impression. I need to see that more.
Yeah. Well, I think at least we're a little more baseline, Tom and I. You're all over, which is great. I love it. It's fantastic.
I've got a circus style voice. Hello, everybody. This is Pick Six podcast for this week. We're going to talk about the Nebraska men's basketball team and Husker football, meeting with Corey Campbell and Donovan Raiola and Rob Dvor Check. The Nebraska men's basketball team is this bizarre, really good story in this moment that no one would have expected to be the case. But here they are. They've won 4 of 5. They've won 3 in a row, and they've won 3 in a row against pretty good teams. And so they're starting their late season run early. They play Minnesota on Saturday, and we will get there. We'll talk certainly about why Nebraska men's basketball is doing this at this moment and where things might go from here. Could they make the NIT? Could they make the NCAA? Could they make the NCAA? We'll talk about what that might take here in a minute. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Omaha World-Herald, which you can do at www.omaha.com/subscribe. You get 26 weeks for $1. Today is February, what day? 23rd? This is going to basically take you to the opening day press conference for Nebraska football the week before they play PJ Fleck. And I've just gone, I'm not going to talk about playing Minnesota anymore because my hunch is that when people think of Minnesota, they think of Fleck and the boat, and that's about all they think of. They don't even know any of the players. It's just, they're going to go play PJ Fleck, and they need to beat PJ Fleck. So if you want to learn all about PJ Fleck and the first game of the Matt Rule era, which will be in Minneapolis, we'll all be there. You're going to want to subscribe to the Omaha World-Herald. I also want to remind people that we have a new podcast called Even Field that is a spotlight on women and girls sports in the state of Nebraska. It's not just Nebraska athletics, but it's high school, it's Creighton, and it has a feature focus. So it's going to be a podcast where you're going to learn a little bit more, not only about the teams, but about the individuals who make those teams spectacular. And so check that out at the places that you would check out a podcast. Apple, Spotify, even on the Omaha World-Herald, so on and so forth. All right, let's get into it with the Pick Six podcast, Nebraska men's basketball. The No-Sit Sunday. Tom, you were there. Were you there for No-Sit Sunday?
Well, it was No-Quit Sunday. Oh, you mean the one way back when? Yeah, I was.
Okay, you were. And I thought you were.
But
so
I did not stand.
That was 9 years ago. By the way, that was 9 years ago. I haven't been to every Nebraska men's basketball game since then. I haven't. Mm-hmm. But I'll say this. For the games that I've been to, and I've been to, I don't know, more than 50, probably, I would say that Sunday's crowd, when Casey hit the 3 or when Rule did the fist pump there in the overtime, that was probably about as loud as I've heard it since No Sit Sunday. There is something going on with this team. People love this team. Why?
Well, because they win. They like the winning because they don't usually get a lot of that this time of year. It's got character. It's got characters.
That's right. Yeah,
It's got Casey, and he's an absolute wonderful, just a joy to watch, and he delivers when he's hot.
Oh,
he's been hot.
He's fun.
But you've also got the Sam Hoiberg.
I know.
The little big man. I mean the walk on, the coach's kid, the underdog. Making that steal. Hoiberg steals the ball. Kent Pavelka was in another level last week, by the way. Another level last Sunday. favorite one was when all was quiet. They're shooting free throws. Make the free throw, and he yells out, "Got it!" And when it's so quiet, the whole arena heard him yell, "Got it!"
Yep.
Oh my God, just wonderful. It's the comeback kid, the fighter. I'm not down yet. I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna show you.
Right.
We're gonna keep fighting. But that's what they liked about this team 2 months ago. Had that thing. They beat Creighton. They come back and beat Iowa. They're playing defense. They're playing hard. I wrote about it. We all wrote about it. The fans at that time were showing up. They were selling it out. They were packing the place and getting loud because they loved the way they played. That hasn't changed. It changed for a while. When they lost Gary and the Vanderbilt. That was a big blow. But they had to regroup, and they did it with offense. Now, what hasn't changed is that they're still fighting. They're still playing hard. And they're hitting more shots. They weren't scoring like they are now before. The defense is still good, not what it was, but still good. Yet the Sam Hoiberg out there running around. I'm not afraid of anybody. I'll take you on right now. Let's go. And Tom Monaga has a little bit of that too. I don't care who you are. I'm throwing up a shot, and it's probably going to go in, and I'm going to celebrate.
Right.
All over you. So it's got all that stuff. And so, as I said, it's not about the record, over 500. Oh, God, we're going to the NIT. Isn't that great? It's about a team that they love to watch. And the identity. It took them 4 years to figure it out. Can they do it next year? Well, we'll get through this year first. But there's no reason why they can't win out at home. And then I watched Iowa last night. Now, that'll be Iowa's their senior day, a week from Sunday. But Iowa's certainly not one of the great teams. They're good, but they're good at home. But so I'm not predicting they're going to win out, but I think they can certainly do it at home. And yes, I know Tom Izzo comes in next week, but it's fun, and it's something different than the long slog to the end, the long march to the end of the year when it's over with and we fire the coach. It's just something different. It's something fun. So I think it just shows, Sam, that the Husker Hoop fans are just hungry for anything good, and they're getting something good.
And they're loyal.
Yes, they are.
I mean, they are.
It's
They're
amazing.
unbelievably
It's an
loyal.
amazing fan base.
Yeah.
What I would add, too, is this is a group of guys who want to be here. Like, this is not about the next thing for these guys, by and large.
Agreed.
Derek Walker, this is it for him, and he's playing like it. Sam Hoiberg, he's happy to be here, and he's fully invested in what this team is doing. Sam Griesel coming back home, doing his thing. It's just like I think it makes it a really relatable group of guys, like guys who are sort of counted out in various ways in their career, and they've come together, and it's created this cool momentum. Like I have a young son, and we started watching Nebraska games this year, and early on he's like, yeah, they're probably not going to win, are they? And this last few weeks he's like, I think Nebraska's going to win. Like even just in that little moment, you can kind of see just some momentum, a little excitement. Like you said, usually February, Tom, is when the cold reality hits that nothing's going to come of this year. And now there's a little bit of hope. And maybe the ceiling for that is hosting an NIT game or being in the NIT. But I agree. I think it just is another example of what Nebraska ball could be. And we're just getting a little taste of that on a small level right now.
Introducing to the Huskers because the Spurs aren't good yet, huh?
Well, when they get the number one overall,
that's right. Well, they'll have to get the ping pong ball. But if they do, of course, they would get the generational player, like the best player in the NBA draft since Kevin Durant, maybe LeBron James, and of course, he'll go to the Spurs.
Worked in 1997.
Yeah, it did.
The French Connection. Yeah. Another thing is, I think people really like the coach. They like Fred. Now,
yeah, I agree with that. They respect him. He seems like a nice guy. Yeah.
Right, and I think they liked him from the always. I think they liked him when he was at Iowa State. He's very likable, but yet he's not a guy that hangs out with fans. He doesn't. I mean, you don't see him a lot,
Right.
in the public eye.
Yeah.
Seems to be a guy who
He keeps his own counsel.
He wants to scheme. He wants to coach practice, and he loves to coach games. He loves the basketball part. He's a guy that I could sit around and hear him tell Johnny Orr stories all day. He's that kind of guy who could do that, but that's not his MO. He's not Tim Miles. He's not going to show up everywhere, and he's not going to entertain. So that just tells me that the people do like him a lot. So I think he's just. I think also he's said that that he was a Husker fan his whole life, and he doesn't want to fail here. He wants to. What I was told by a coach who knows him is that before he wants to nothing else. He wants to be able to walk down the street in Lincoln and hear people talking about how they love the program. They're proud to follow Nebraska basketball.
Right.
So whatever that means, he wants to win an NCAA tournament game, but at the very least, he wants to be able to put the program on a place where the fans are proud of it.
I think that's sincere. I think that's very, very true. Technically speaking, and again, I'm not necessarily a basketball expert. I watch a lot of it, and I like it. What Nebraska, I think, has done on offense is they found a really good identity. They're a little bit better offensively than they were when Bandamel and Gary were healthy, because Bandamel and Gary couldn't make threes. And Sam Hoiberg, Casey, CJ, and Jamarcus Lawrence can. I mean, they're just better three-point shooters, so that helps, I think, offensively. Derek Walker has played really well in the last 3 or 4 games. He's done a nice job of what they call the nail, and there's a nail, right, obviously, at the free throw line. He stands there with the ball above his head, and he can handle the ball. And if things clear out and the cutters aren't open, he waits until all that clears, and then he attacks that post, and he goes right at him. And he went right at Julian Reese on Sunday, and he had a really great game. He had 23 points. He had 9 points from the free throw line. Walker is such a dynamic, interesting player. I like gifted big men. Not that I don't like the guy that's, sort of the classic center, but I like a guy that can do what he does. Like, I like a guy that can pass and dribble a little bit and do some of the things that he does. Offensively, again, if you watch their sets, they have really, really good identity right now, and the chemistry is there. And as a contrast, and again, we do this sometimes, Creighton has an identity, but it's always kind of like, who's going to be the person that makes the play? You don't know who it is with Creighton. With Nebraska, they have a very clear sense. Derek Walker's going to get the ball. If Derek can't get anything done, he's going to hand it off to Sam with about 17 seconds left, and Sam's going to go back somebody down. He's either going to throw it out or he's going to put up a shot. And there's just a clarity about the way they play that I really like right now. Defensively, I don't know how they're doing it. I don't. Because if you look at the guys that are on the floor, and frankly, their height, it's unbelievable to me that Sam Hoiberg's doing what he's doing. Sam's just not that tall of a guy. And one of the reasons that Sam didn't get a bunch of offers, because he's a heck of an offensive player, that's obvious, is it's hard for him to guard somebody who's 6'7", and yet there he was. Several times during the game, guarding bigger guys, and they didn't want any part of him. And then at the end of the game, Jameer Young, who's really good, I mean, he's one of the 3 or 4 best point guards in the Big Ten, he's trying to shake Sam. He couldn't do it. He had to settle for a fadeaway jumper, and then Sam makes that steal. And that, their defense is surprisingly good, because it shouldn't be.
The secret to defense is effort and attitude. Athleticism and length, surely they help.
Well, that helps.
But I've seen guys they got the length and the athleticism who don't want to play defense.
Right.
If you want to play it, and you're gonna be in their face, and you have the effort, you play defense. And the instinct to make that steal. That's a little bit of a coach's son's.
Probably.
That's a kid who's been hanging around the game his whole life, right?
Yep.
To think of that, just a basic inbounds, and you don't usually think of, if you're the guy inbounding, you don't usually think if somebody's going to steal it. You're just going to throw it in there.
Right.
So it's a hell of a play, And every once in a while, you talk about the offense. Fred reminds us that he can draw up some offensive plays. Every once in a while, there's a guy open under the basket who ends up there open for a layup or
Right.
the cutter. I mean, it's every once in a while he shows you that this guy's pretty good.
Oh, no question. And they are a better offense right now than they were with Bandamel and Gary. And that's the tricky part of this is that, and I was included in this, people are like, oh my gosh, now that these guys are out, they are in trouble. And they were in trouble defensively. Offensively, they're better because Casey on the floor is a better offensive player maybe than any of Nebraska's
They had to
guards.
play him more, but they also had to score.
Right.
And
And that's right. So Casey is, he can score. He just has a natural ability to especially around the rim. I think the thing that impresses me the most about Casey isn't the threes, but that when he doesn't have a three, unlike other players, he gets to the rim and then he makes these circus shots underneath the hoop.
what an interesting character. The Japanese media are now following.
They are.
him
Well,
there.
they were there on
And,
Sunday, no question.
there's only the rumors that he's going to turn pro after the year. We'll have to see. But if they can get him back, I mean, you're talking about Lawrence and him, CJ. The blessing, if there is a blessing of the injuries, there's a lot of guys who may not have played too much are now getting to play a lot, and so you have something to at least start with next year. Because
Well, they're going to get some players out of the portal after this.
right.
Well,
They're
and
going to
that's
get
what-
some good
that's-
players.
But they have to be the right fits, though.
Right.
The guys they got this year were the right fits.
They were.
And that's what I'm curious about is, like, what does this mean in the bigger picture? Like, is this just a lightning in the bottle sort of deal that they're going to enjoy and maybe they'll end it in an NIT game and then that'll be that? Or is this, did they figure something out? Is this some sort of culture or system that they've established that can be portable
Right.
when the roster turns over moving into the future?
I think they're going to be able to find a guy that can come in. They're going to turn on the Derek Walker film and say, "Here's what you can be here, and this will help you get to the NBA." And the thing that Derek can't do is make perimeter shots. He can't make anything beyond 15 feet with any regularity. But there are big men out there who can. And if you're able to turn that film on and say, "Now this is what George Niang did, and this is what Derek Walker did. This is what you can do." And how about, would you like to average 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists a game? Here you go. This is a great film to turn on for the NBA. So I think they'll get a transfer there, and I think they'll get a guard or two. I don't know what guard. I think that's a question mark at this point, and that's probably what separates them from potentially being an NCAA tournament team next year or just building. But they have a chance to make the NIT. So right now, they're right on the line. So they're 14-14. And their NET ranking is 89, which is low. That's probably not going to get you in the NIT. I don't really care what anyone says. Colloquially, it won't. You've got to win. So they win the next two. If they beat Michigan State, or if they beat Minnesota and Michigan State, they're 16-14, and their NET maybe moves up to about 85 or 84. Then they go to Iowa. Hard to see them beating Iowa, but you never know. And then they probably got to win 2 in the Big Ten tournament.
I think two. The first one against an Ohio State or somebody, and the second one against like a Rutgers or Michigan State or somebody like that. I don't know who's in that middle pack that they face, but yeah. So
If they're an 11 seed at the Big Ten tournament, which is, there's still a good chance of that, for how people may feel however they want to feel about it, but they could be an 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They would face Minnesota again, and then they would face the 6, and the 6 right now could be Illinois. Don't want to play them. Could be Iowa. Probably want to play them. Or if they're at the 12, that's preferable. If you're at the 12 spot, then you play a decent Ohio State team that's got a decent NET, and then in that second round, you're playing a team like Rutgers.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends.
Yeah, that's we could talk about this toward the end of the year too, but looking ahead to what they need next year, they don't need to have another year like this. They wanted in year 5. You want to make the tournament, so you have to look at, okay, what do we need that we currently have? What else do we need what else do we need besides the same pieces we have now? Is it a scorer? Is it somebody that's a big time scorer or can take over a game? Is it another power forward? Is it? I don't know. It's an interesting thing to say that. Well, will he be? Will they be trying to play all defense? Have the defensive identity like they did last year, or at the beginning of this year, or will they try to do? I think it depends on if Tominaga comes back. That is a big piece.
And they can't do much NIL-wise there.
No, and so he's going to get
until they figure it out.
I don't pretend to have any insight there at all. But what I'm saying is you can't just have another team like this. It has to be better because you want to go to the tournament next year.
Sure.
So, because eventually people are going to start wanting to. Okay, this is great. We love how you're playing. You're playing hard, but we need more. So, we'll see what happens.
I think Nebraska needs to win the Big Ten tournament to make the NCAA tournament. I've heard arguments for 19 or 20 wins. You know what? Maybe if they got to 20, maybe you're thinking about that. But I just anticipate the NCAA tournament committee being really stingy with the Big Ten and basically saying all these teams that are jumbled together basically means that a lot of these teams aren't very good. And other, like, they won't take the argument of everybody's beating everybody up. They do that with the Big 12, but they don't do that with the Big 10. I actually think there's some teams that are going to be left on the cutting room floor in the Big 10. I don't know who it's going to be. It could be Wisconsin. It could be.
Yeah, I don't think Wisconsin. They don't have enough quality wins.
And I think Iowa's got to watch its butt here down the stretch. I don't think Iowa's in great shape either if they lose to Nebraska. I just think Iowa's got to watch itself too. So,
yep,
I think it'll be kind of close. Let's move to football. 3 assistants talked yesterday for the first time in I don't know however many years. The strength and conditioning coach talked, and Zach Duvall never spoke. You tried to. I think you asked for like 100 interview requests of Zach Duvall over the years. James Dobson, I don't recall ever doing it. Mark Phillip did an interview with us over the phone. And he might have done an interview with the Journal-Star, but he didn't do a lot of interviews either. Mm-hmm. You really got to kind of go all the way back to like Dave Kennedy. I think he did a few. But there hasn't been somebody who's been out as front as Corey Campbell was really since Boyd Epley.
Right.
And so it was interesting to listen to him talk. I thought there were some illuminating points. That's probably the interview that struck me the most yesterday was just the things that Campbell said.
Yeah, he had that great quote about there's no substitute for strength and no excuse for not having it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing you put up on your weight room wall. I mean, and I think that's valuable because, and you asked him, Sam, about how strength and conditioning has changed even in the decades since he left Georgia. And I thought his answer was good, where you have to be aware of the things that technology allows you to do, but at the same time, like, you can't get so caught up in the next thing and how you measure guys that you lose sight of the main thing. And so, he's a guy who's, I think, in his early 30s still, but he had some good perspective. I think the fact that he's a former walk-on and that his story was sort of, at Georgia, was defined by the fact that he made up for his relative lack of skill in the weight room. That's how he got on the field. And so, like, a guy like that who experienced the power of the weight room firsthand, leading that team and being insightful in all those other ways, to me is really an interesting, I don't know, zig or zag for what Nebraska has done in the past, where it seems like a lot of the past guys have been so inundated in the science of it. And you can look at Campbell. I mean, he's obviously doing his own stuff. And the guy's ripped. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought it was impressive. He's done some podcasts, so I don't think it was anything groundbreaking what we heard, but just the ethos of it, I think, made a lot of sense. And the other thing I would say that I was curious about is how does a guy who has so much time with the players on his own away from the coaching staff, how does that integrate with Matt Rule? And he mentioned, he dropped that little line early in there, what Matt Rule always says about getting 1% better every day. And so it does feel like there's a certain alignment there that you got to have between head coach and strength coach too.
Donovan Raiola was one of the interviewees yesterday. He was effusive as usual. But he's the lone holdover of the group, Tom, and it sounded as if, and maybe this is me reading a little too much into it, he did sound a little bit lighter yesterday than he did last year. Almost like he actually feels like he's settled into the job a little.
I'm sure he has. I like him, and I like him over on the side at the table where he can sit back and talk to the writers and the TV folks and whoever. But up front, you're not going to get much. But I think off to the side, I remember last spring, his first time he talked, he was pretty good. He gave us some insight. I like the fact that these guys are all doing this. I hope it's something that is going to continue. The fans, the Raiders love it. We love it. I think it shows accountability. That okay, you're not going to hide. You're going to go up and talk, and everybody's going to do it. Everybody does this. So, the strength coach, I think, is an interesting. I don't know why more programs don't put those guys out front a little bit. I think it could be a valuable thing for recruiting. If recruits can hear from the guy who's running the strength program, make him a little bit of a celebrity. Not like Boyd. I love Boyd Epling. But he was a showman and a celebrity in his own right.
Right.
He created his own kingdom, and he was in charge, and he let you know it. And but he was always full of a lot of facts and a lot of numbers that didn't always make sense to me. Whenever I get to a weight room, I break out in hives. But a lot of these, the fans and Raiders love this stuff. Every August, Boyd used to have a little press meeting before the first practice. Here's the off-season numbers. Here's what they mean. Here's who got better. Here's who got faster, stronger, so on and so forth. Here's how it should help. And whether it did or not. But, a lot of times it was just Boyd wanting to, talk to the media. But we got stories out of it. I think they should bring that back and let him talk as much as he wants to. That could be dangerous because there's plenty of people in the media around here who would talk to him all the time about stuff. But I think he should come out of the weight room, or we go down to see him a couple of times a year at least.
Oh, yeah.
And
the inner sanctum.
But I think, why not sell that to the recruits and to the public? Hey, here's our guy, and by the way, he can talk. He's a human being. Yeah, he's not a robot. And he's here's what we're doing, and we want everybody to know it. And we're cutting edge on this. We're doing this and this. And some coaches don't want that out, but there aren't many secrets. It's a weight room, What are you doing? I think I like that he talked. I think he should do more.
Yeah, I think strength and conditioning programs are fairly secretive for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just part of the that's part of the mystique, the brotherhood, that kind of thing. There's just a quiet nature about it.
Everybody has an edge or an inefficiency that they're going to exploit.
Right. Duvall did do a podcast last year.
Did he?
Yeah, for the Huskers. Remember?
Oh, yeah, okay. He did.
There were a couple comments made during there where I was like, if you made these to the full media, that wouldn't have been helpful. Like he said, it's our job to kind of break these guys, and then build, especially in light of the the vomit comments. So I think there was maybe he just didn't want to talk. I don't really know. Then Rob Dvor Check was the last one. He's got an interesting job. So I think he's the linebackers coach. He's got two very experienced players coming back. One of them will be out for spring. They may both be out for spring. I don't know. But one of them definitely will be. But he's got his two starters effectively, and then he's got to figure out, Evan, A, who's in his room, B, who can start. And it's probably going to be one of these transfers, Sherman or Borders.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's talking to them now, but he didn't know. Like, he was like, I don't know who's going to really be in my room at the end, which is kind of in keeping with what we've heard from a lot of defensive coaches. But it is an interesting dynamic because you've got Henrich, who's out this spring with an ACL.
Right.
You've got Reimer, who Matt Rule told us they're not overly inclined to beat him up this spring.
No.
They know what he is.
Yeah.
So it'll be a really interesting spring. You know, I think of MJ Sherman and Chief Borders, two pretty high-profile transfers, high recruiting pedigree. You know, what do those guys do? What do you see from guys who've been around the program for a couple of years, like Randolph Kapai or Makai Bayer or whoever? Like I don't know. Like those are guys that are interesting to me too because they're being viewed through different eyes. And I think one thing that's become clear about this Nebraska staff is they're going to be more creative with how they get their best 11 on the field. And they're not going to be afraid to move guys positionally. They're not going to be afraid to, you know, just be a little bit unconventional. They're not going to pigeonhole anybody into a certain position and go from there. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how they work through that. And you know, Dvor Check is 28. He turns 29 next month. So if not for Garrett McGuire, who's 24, I think there'd be a lot more discussion too about just his youth, his relative youth. You know, in the profession. I mean, he was coaching defensive line at Lehigh at the FCS level 4 years ago, and now he's here.
Yeah.
And what's notable about this? So one thing that people should recognize about some of Rule's staff members, especially the young ones, they have been position coaches at much smaller programs. They have done that to some degree on the direction and advice of Rule himself, who will tell people, if you want to be a coach, don't be a quality control guy for LSU. Go coach at Albany. Go coach, you know, at some small school. Go be a coach. This is exactly what Matt Rule did when he went to Western Carolina, which is nobody's idea of a spectacular program. But he goes there because he wanted to be a coach. So he is less inclined to hire people who have, you know, and how do I put this? You know, guys that have been like QC guys or like, you know, 4 or 5 years in sort of a personnel role, and then all of a sudden they go on the field. He likes guys that have actually experienced what it's like to be responsible for a position, even if it's a position at a Division II or an FCS or Division III school. And so part of Dvor Check probably could have followed Rule everywhere he went. And we could say, oh, this guy's an up-and-comer. But he goes to Lehigh, and people look at that, and they're like, Lehigh? But the guy knows how to coach football as a result of listening to what Rule told him to do. And that's why a lot of these guys do that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and Dvor Check to me is, and now, okay, so we've heard it from everybody on the staff now. All 10 on-field assistants, Corey Campbell, the strength and conditioning coach. Dvor Check's story is another reminder of just how, you know, how tied together this staff is. I mean, his story about being a linebacker at Temple and blowing out his knee, and Rule essentially turning him to a coach and getting him his break in that profession, I think just speaks to this bigger picture of, again, the staff owes so much to him collectively. Like, you can go down the staff list and see how many of these guys would feel directly, you know, like they owe Rule something for their career.
Oh, no
You know,
question.
Bob Wager, yes. Garrett McGuire, Donovan Raiola now as a holdover, E.J. Barthel, Terrence Knighton, Rob Dvorak. Like, these guys, for the most part, got their big breaks from Matt Rule. And you've said it before too, Sam. Like, what's a 20-something not going to do for the guy who gave him his big break? You know, these are guys that are going to the middle school basketball games of Terrence Knighton because of how close they are and
Yeah.
you know, that sort of thing. So, like, what does that mean for next season and for the success of the program? I don't know, but it's different. It's different than we've seen, and certainly you think about last year and how that staff was sort of cobbled together and everybody had their own kind of brand and history. Like, these are guys who grew up together. Like, you think about, like, people that get married in their 30s or 40s after they have an identity versus, like, these guys were high school sweethearts and they grew up and they You know, they
No,
have
I
the
get
same,
it.
They have the
That's
same
a
view
good
on
way of putting
things.
it.
I think I just see a lot of that throughout the staff, and Dvor Check was another really obvious example of
With the
that.
exception of the defensive coordinator,
Yeah, that's
who
right.
is the X factor.
That's right.
What's interesting about that is they go out and they hire a defensive coordinator who runs a scheme that they've not run before. I know what Dvor Check said. Oh, yeah, it's similar. But it's really not. They went out and hired a new scheme. And the way that it's been described, and we will talk way more about the 3-3-5, the way it's been described is so interesting. That it's, because Rule told us we're not going to try to trick you on scheme, but the 3-3-5 is designed to mess with you. Like, you're not supposed to know who's coming, and based on what you see before the snap, you don't know what coverage they're going to go into. They could go into a 3-deep coverage. They could go into 2-deep coverage. They could do a lot of different things based on the personnel they have on the field. And from my perspective, it's a good run defense and it's a good pass cover defense. If you don't know how to recognize coverages, it's a defense that needs to that then generates a pass rush by being tricky. They bring guys from various different places, and you hope that the linemen on the other side don't know who to pick up. So it's interesting. Like
and I would add to that it fits their philosophy of, again, finding the best 11. You can go with a 3D lineman. If you feel like you have depth there, you can make it 4. Put a nickel back there. Maybe if you have more of a hybrid linebacker. Like, it, to me, that's sort of where the base of that.
I don't
comes
think
from.
they'll run a 4-down line in any traditional way, unless what you do is you end up calling a 245 or 250 pound Jamari Butler or Blaze Gunnerson alignment.
Sure.
It is so hard to recruit 4 of those guys, so hard. And if you have 4 of those men on the field, you must orient your defense in a way that is just different. A 4-down line is not usually going to guard the run as well. And teams want to take that run away, and then they want to be tricky on the back end. I like a 4-down line, but it's hard to achieve. I think you'll see a 3-down line with a 4th guy being a spinner, the way that Bo Pelini used to call it. And then they're going to take that rover, joker, whatever they want to call it, jack, and they're going to put that guy about 9 yards off the line of scrimmage every play, and you aren't going to know if that guy's coming or if he's dropping like a safety. Mm-hmm. The question is who that player is going to be. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
I was just saying, I know we all love this game in Nebraska, and it's important at times. But to me, whether this is the 3, whatever, the 3, 1, 2, 5, 3, 4, 5, give me 11 guys who want to kick somebody's butt, who can tackle, who can make a proper tackle, put the guy on the, put your shoulder into him, put him on the ground immediately. Don't dance around, try to tackle his shoulder pads or his helmet or whatever, hold his hand, put him on the ground. And the best defenses we see are in the SEC. Do we know what kind of scheme Alabama uses or Georgia? We just know that they've got 11 bad dudes who want to hurt you. So Nebraska's best defense is under Charlie, Kiffin, whoever, Pelini, had players.
They had players.
Dominican Sue.
Yeah.
What position did he play? He was a bad guy. He was a great player.
Yeah.
He was a good guy.
Right.
But he was a bad dude. That's what he played.
Yeah.
So that's what they need. They need to get back into that business of tough, fast defensive players with attitude. And I would say about the coach. This is a linebacker league, so I think that's going to be an important position. But I like the fact that they have to start out at the smaller level and move up. What we want here is experience. When I've criticized the past staffs, it's because these guys didn't have the experience. And but now, we'll say Ryan Held coached at a million places. He had experience.
Right.
Greg Austin coached all the way up, all the way up the food chain. So it isn't always about that. I think it's about the head coach.
Yeah.
And this will succeed or fail based on Matt Rule and the delegation of authority and his involvement, everyday stuff, attention to detail. So far, so good. But he likes these guys. they're all. You're right. They're all loyal to him, and they all know him. He knows them, and that's a big deal. But he's if he thinks these guys are good, okay, I'm going to go with it but he's got to be the head coach has to be the real deal, and that's where Nebraska has failed over the years.
Yeah.
The head coach has not been the real deal for what they needed. So, as I've said, people tell me all the time, "What do you think about Matt Rule? Man, this guy's unbelievable." I said, "Yeah, he is unbelievable. He's at basketball games, tennis matches. He's tweeting. He's doing all this stuff." I said, "He's making all the right moves. I just hope he can coach." And that's how I feel about it. I hope the guy can coach, because if he can coach, he's going to be unbelievable. So let's sit back and watch. But I think the staff, the head coach is only as good as his staff.
Right.
But the staff is only as good as the head coach. And I think Matt Rule is going to have a lot to say about the experience, inexperience, whatever, how good these guys are.
I think that's a good place to end it. Quickly, the 4-down, 3-down thing. What I will say about that, again, we'll talk more and more about this, is the 4-down was in vogue until Rich Rodriguez and Tim Tebow came along. Now, I know they one coach, one team, one play. But when when you're able to read off a 3 technique on a zone read and not block the best defender on the front 4, and you can just run around that person, that changed the conversation. And now if you're going to run a 4-down, Iowa gets away with it because nobody zone reads in this league. Wait until Nebraska and Jeff Sims goes to Iowa and they're running a 4-down line, and Jeff Sims or whomever is running around that end. Iowa will have to change. I don't know why Scott struggled to get to it, but we'll see where they go from here. Okay, that is our podcast for this one. We will be back with another podcast this week to talk about Nebraska baseball. For Evan and Tom, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening to the Big Six Podcast.